Okay. I have a question for all of you Star Trek fans, all of you serious Star Trek fans. I'm a Star Trek fan, but some of you are massively serious, go to conventions, dress up as people type fan. So I'm asking all of you, and I'm asking those of you that can write fan fiction, because I can't write fan fiction at all. Hell, I could probably get 2 paragraphs out. That's it. So I'm asking all of you to let me know in the comments, or I'm gonna try and post something on the Star Trek Next Generation Facebook page if they will allow me. I'm gonna post this question. I am currently doing and reviewing, well, we are on disc 7 of season 3. We are in the very last episode of season 3. The Borg are coming! Last week we did Transfigurations 173, and it's Friday, so it's Star Trek Day. And today we are doing the Best of Both Worlds Part 1, Episode 174. And my question to all of you Star Trek people out there, who are better than I am, if you could rewrite this episode, and instead of Hanson and Shelby characters, can we have Janeway, Captain Catherine Janeway, and 7 of 9 do a time travel back to this day and time in episode, and how they would affect the episode? Would they make it better? How would they change it? We could still have Picard get caught because they beam in right next to him and get him. But their knowledge of the Borg would change. They would have additional expertise. So, it's time. So, I'm asking all of you, how would it change? Would it be better? Would you think it'd be worse? If would it change the timeline situation? If 7 of 9 and Captain Catherine Janeway came back just for these 2 episodes, just for this short period of time, if they did a time travel thing, if you could rewrite it, how would it go? Oh, and by the way, this is the D. Louise book series, and I'm Christina, Kristina, and I could really use your like and subscribes because I just read books and talk books. I have no special effects, no gimmicks. I'm experimenting this week on the book end of the world, but we'll see how that goes. But every Friday, I do Star Trek Next Generation, and every Monday, we're doing Flashback Monday. We're reviewing books from, I'm getting my old RT Review magazine. That was the best book magazine in the world. There has never been another one like it. They reviewed over 200 books per magazine. So we are going Flashback Monday. We are doing Star Trek Next Generation Fridays. After this, we will maybe do the movies, and we will get into Voyager. But right now, we are doing the Best of Both Worlds. And I want to point out something to you, that this is how the thing looked the whole decade, right? The whole disc, right? Then when you went into the whole spiel, they all looked like this, right? Best of Both Worlds is different. This is the Best of Both Worlds Part 1. And I want to know, how is the Borg the best of both worlds? Could they have not thought of a better title? Encountering the Borg is not the best of both worlds. It's just not. Having Catherine Janeway and 7 of 9 in your back pocket would be good. So I'm interested to see if anybody responds to my questions and if they allow me to post it on Facebook if I get any responses. So that'll be later. So we start with the Best of Both Worlds Part 1, Season 3, Disc 7, Episode 174. We start with an overview from the Captain. The Enterprise has arrived at Juret 4 in response to a distress signal from one of the Federation's outmost colonies. And again, I wrote my spiel, so I've already said my spiel about how if Hansen and Shelby were replaced by Janeway, how that would work out. It's good to see O'Brien. I'm happy to see O'Brien. Colomini's back. You know me, I always get excited when I see Colomini. And he's got more than lines this time. Cool beans. Now, if he would only be made a permanent part of the cast, that would be cool beans. So, he says it's always nice. So, he's the first person we see, by the way. They the episode opens, and there's Colomini standing there. The group is transporting down to the surface Riker, Worf, Geordi, and Data. Riker asks if there has been any response from the surface. Worf says no, there's been no communication for the colony in over 12 hours. Riker asks if sensors are picking up any signs of life. Worf says there are none. O'Brien says surface environment is safe for transport, Commander. And they beam down to the planet. So they beam down to the planet. Riker calls Mr. O'Brien and asks him to verify that they are at the correct coordinates for the New Providence colony. O'Brien says, verified, sir. You are at the center of town. The close-up shot is like this. But after, when the camera pulls out, there's the Grand Canyon. It's totally nothing. So, green screen or the Grand Canyon? What do you think? Is there some place on the planet that looks like that? Or is it green screen? Green screen, probably. So then we go to opening credits. When we come back from opening credits, we have a voice overview from the captain. He's saying Admiral Hansen and Lieutenant Commander Shelby of Starfleet Tactical have arrived to review the disappearance of the New Providence colony. No sign remains of the 900 inhabitants. The next scene is in the captain's office. Hansen is saying the truth, hell, we are not ready. We have known that they were coming for over a year. We have thrown every resource we have into this, but still. Riker interrupts and says, then you're convinced it's the Borg. Lieutenant Commander Shelby says, that's what I am here to find out. The initial descriptions of the surface conditions are almost identical to your report of System J25. Picard says, Commander Riker wrote those reports. He agrees with you. Hansen Admiral says, Commander Shelby took over Borg tactical analysis 6 months ago. I have learned to give her a wide latitude. Again, I would love to see fans write this episode having Janeway and 7 of 9 participate in this episode. Hansen continues, when I want to get things done, that's how I intend to operate here. Shelby says, my priority has been to develop any kind of defense strategy. Riker says, obviously nothing we have can stop them. Shelby says, we've been designing new weapons, but they are still on the drawing board. Hansen says, we expected much more lead time. Your encounter with the Borg was over 7,000 light years away. Thanks to Q. Picard says, if this is the Borg, it would indicate they have source of power far superior to our own. Well, duh. Shelby says, I would like to see the colony site as soon as possible, Captain. Riker says it will be dark there in 30 minutes. We have scheduled a away team for dawn. Picard says, number one, why don't you show the commander to her quarters? As they leave, Riker says, it's our poker night, Admiral. Always a seat for you. Hansen says, another time, Commander. You and your captain and I have a lot to cover, but rumor has it Commander Shelby has played a hand or two. After they leave, Hansen says, keep your eye on her, Jean-Luc. She is very impressive lady. Picard says, you seem rather taken with her, JP. Hansen says, just in old man fantasies. When Shelby came into tactical, every admiral's uncle had a take on this Borg business. She cut through it and put us on track. Picard goes in here and gets the key. I have never noticed that door before. I thought this was a room. I didn't know there was another room off this door. Another room. He always went over to the replicator and got the tea. This is the first time I've seen him or noticed him leave the room. Has he left the room before? I've never noticed this door here before. Was it here before? So, Captain leaves the room. I'm sitting going, what the hell is he leaving the room for when the guy's in the middle of speaking? That's bad etiquette. Oh, that looks terrible. So, I mean, you don't leave the room when someone's talking, and he didn't even say what he was doing. He just got up and left. He didn't say, oh, would you like some tea or something? He didn't say that. He just got up and left the room. There's something wrong with the etiquette in that one. I don't get it. I mean, because he just leaves the room, and I'm sitting there going, why did he leave the room? He was talking. He was in the middle of a conversation. That's rude. And then he comes back with the tray. I'm like, oh. I'm used to him going over to the replicator in the corner. When did this room show up? So, Hansen says, he serves in the Earl Grey. Then Hansen says, she'd make you one hell of a first officer. Picard says, I already have a hell of a first officer. Hansen says, don't tell me he's going to pass up another commission. One's available, Picard asks. Hansen says, the Melbourne, if he wants it, it's his. Hasn't he told you? Picard says he will make a fine captain, JP. Hansen says, you may want to tell him that. We are still waiting on his decision. This is the third time we have pulled out the captain's chair for Riker, but he won't sit down. Well, let me just tell you something, Jean-Luc. There's a lot of young hotshots like Shelby on the way up. Riker could suddenly look like he is standing still next to them. He is hurting his career by staying put, and if I were you, I'd kick him in the rear for his own good. The next scene is Riker showing Shelby to her quarters. Shelby says, I don't know exactly what I am looking for, but we have tested the sections of the Enterprise hull that were damaged by the Borg. There were some unusual magnetic Renaissance traces. Riker says, a Borg footprint? Shelby says, that's my theory. I will see if it holds up tomorrow. I have reviewed your personnel. I will be signing Mr. LaForge and Mr. Data to accompany me on the way team. Riker says, I've already assigned them to the away team, and I will be with you, Commander. Shelby says, of course. I appreciate any assistance you can offer. Tell me, Commander, is serving aboard the Enterprise as an extraordinary experience as I've heard? Riker says, every bit. Shelby says, good, because I intend to convince Captain Picard that I am the right person for the job. Job? What job? Shelby says, well, yours, of course. I heard you were leaving. Riker says, if I were, I'm sure you'd be the first to know. Poker is at 700 in my quarters, deck 8. I think someone's feelings are hurt. Okay, now, I'm thinking about it here, so I'll say it here, but I wrote it down for later, so I'll probably repeat myself. So please forgive me if I repeat myself. But they are playing poker. Riker, Troy, Data, Geordi, Wesley, and Shelby. All right. Now, my peeve was, and I think it's good to mention it here because it's a group. I know I wrote it down later. I wrote it down in a few different places. But I found the one thing that is wrong with closed captioning, and I feel for the deaf on this particular issue. It's so small and it could be corrected, but whoever makes the powers that be, whatever, they probably don't care. But if you have a group of people like here, or even if it's let's say there are 3 people in the room, if the camera is not focusing on the particular person speaking, but they do have the lines going across, but you'll notice it doesn't say who was saying this line. So if you're a deaf person, you are not going to know who said that line. Yes, all right, the person who says it gets a response from another person, and the other person says, hey, person. So that's probably how they would do it. But I'm just saying, if you have a room of 2 or 3 people, and the camera is not focused on the 2 or 3 people, and let's say it's focused on one, and there's 2 other people, and the words is, and the person the camera is focused on is not speaking. So it's got to be one of the other 2. And if you're new to the series or whatever, you don't know, you're not going to know who's speaking. And I think it's rude. I think they should be putting down the name of the character and then the line. It's just a thought. It was just a thought. I know I wrote it down later on to make a point someplace, but because I had to run it back myself to hear who said it, so I could say Wesley said. And I think this is the first time that Wesley has ever attended the poker game. And it's later pointed out that it is the first time that Wesley ever attended the poker game. And I don't know if we ever see him again. We'll have to think on that. Well, because he leaves soon. So Wesley asks, got another king in the hole, Data? Data says, I'm afraid I can't answer that, Wesley. And as you are a newcomer to the game, I may say it's inappropriate for you to ask. Oh, shame on me. Oh, I'm embarrassed. Oh, don't point it out. They continue to play the game. And poor Wesley falls for Riker's bluff. I felt so bad for Wesley because he could have won that game, but he fell for the bluff. I felt bad. Before we leave this, is this real money? I thought there wasn't money in the 23rd or 4th century, whatever century this is. I thought they didn't really money. This is just fake, right? I didn't think they actually made salaries. I was just wondering if it's fake money, if they're just, it's not real. Because every now and then you'll hear, oh, it's too steep for me or too big for me. And I'm just wondering, is it real money? Or are these just fake? Are we playing fake like we do the stock watch with Big Brother? Is it real or is it fake? I was just curious because I didn't think money existed in this time frame. So if someone could help me out with that. Okay, so then we're in the transporter room, and it's nice to see O'Brien or Colomini getting some screen time. Riker and Geordi arrive at the transporter room, and Riker says, Mr. Data and our guests seem to be tardy. O'Brien says, oh no, they beamed down an hour ago. And Riker's pissed. Riker says, on whose authority? And O'Brien says, hers? Then Riker and Geordi beam down to the planet. Shelby says, good morning. Early bird gets the worm, eh? We have some interesting results. Riker says, Commander Shelby walked with me. So they go for a walk. Geordi and Data talk. Data says, the early bird? I believe Commander Shelby erred. There's no evidence of ever fungal or crawling vermicular life forms on Jarrett 4. Geordi said, that's not what she meant, Data, but you're right, she erred. It's too funny. I love Data. So Shelby says, I'm sorry, I woke early and I saw that the weather system was moving in. It could have affected the soil readings. Riker said, so without any regard for the risk of coming down here alone. Shelby interrupts and says, Commander, if we ran into the Borg here, 2 extra bodies wouldn't have made hell of a difference, now would they? You know, data is important to us. And I guess you don't care about your own life either, huh? If you haven't watched Picard 3, you should catch up with Riker and Shelby again. And also on Will Wheaton's little podcast TV show, I forget what it's called. He's got the Ready Room. That's it. He does those little shows. They talk about this. They're meeting again, Shelby and Riker. So Shelby continues, we had 3 hours before the storm front hit. Less than 2 hours now. Data was available and I took him. We came. I don't see your problem. Riker says, my problem, Commander, is I expect to be notified before there is a change in my orders. Shelby says, noted for future reference. Do you wish to hear my report, sir? Riker says, go ahead. Shelby says the soil contains the same magnetic resonance traces. That is our footprint, and there is no doubt anymore it is the Borg. Then we get a voiceover view from the captain. With confirmation of the Borg's President's Federation space, Admiral Hansen has returned to Starbase 324 to discuss strategy with Starfleet Command. Lieutenant Commander Shelby remains on board to continue tactical preparations. I've also ordered a standing yellow alert. Riker says Federation allied outposts have been warned. Ops will continue to monitor long-range sensors. I have assigned Mr. Data LaForge and Mr. Crusher to work with Commander Shelby. Picard says, good. You have covered all the bases. Picard asks Riker his impression of Shelby. Picard says she knows her stuff. Riker says she knows her stuff. Picard says she has your full confidence. Riker says, well, I think she needs supervision. She takes the initiative a little too easily, sometimes with risk. Picard says, sounds like a young lieutenant commander I know. Good grief. Riker says, perhaps. Picard says, well, what the hell are you doing here? Riker says, huh, sir? Picard says, you've been offered the Melbourne, Riker. I've decided not to pursue that commission at this time. Picard says, she's a fine ship, Will. Riker says, but she's not the Enterprise, and I want the Enterprise. I want the Enterprise. I'm sorry, forgive me. He gets the Titan, right? That's what we assume. We could do an in-between series. We could do a Riker series in between the end of Next Gen and Picard. But you know what I really want more than anything else? I want a Voyager! I want more Voyager. Don't tell me about that stupid cartoon. Every time I mention it, people go, oh, this is a cartoon. I don't want the cartoon. I want real people. I want Voyager. I want Voyager back. I want my crew back. If we can get Next Gen back, but I don't want to have to wait that long. I don't want to have to wait 30 years. I want Voyager back now. They're all on the picket lines. Go talk to them. Go talk to the powers that be, the writers. Walk the picket lines and go, hey, how about some Voyager? I know you're not writing right now because you're not getting paid to, but maybe you're writing secretly at home to get a little ahead so that when the strike is off, you have scripts that you can produce. So if you could produce a Voyager script, oh, and a Stargate Atlantis script too, I'd appreciate that, and Stargate SG-1 too, please. Just please. So where was I? Picard says Starfleet needs good captains, particularly now. Reconsider your decision. Riker says, are you telling me to leave, Captain? Picard says, I'm asking you to look at your career objectively, Will. You are ready to work without a net. You are ready to take command, and you know the Enterprise will go along just fine without you. But it's not the Enterprise! I want the Enterprise! And I want to be with you! You're my friend! You're my pal! These are my family! Sorry. Sorry. So who do we go to talk to? So Riker goes with Troy to 10 forward. Riker is asking Troy, what am I still doing here? Deanna, I pushed myself hard to get this far. I sacrificed a lot. I always said I wanted my own command, and yet something is holding me back. Is it wrong for me to want to stay? And she gives the typical psychiatrist answer. I swear it, every time you've ever seen a movie or TV show or anything, the psychiatrists never answer your questions, they just ask you the question. So he's like, is it wrong for me to stay? And she goes, what do you think? Troy says, Riker says, the captain says Shelby reminds him of the way I used to be. And he's right. She comes in here full of drive and ambition, impatient and taking risks. I look at her and wonder what happened to those things in me. I like those things about me. I've lost something. Troy says, you mean you are older, more experienced, a little more seasoned? Riker says, seasoned? That's a horrible thing to say to a man, Troy. Troy says, I don't think you have a lot. I don't think you have a thing. I think you have gained more than you realize. You are much more comfortable with yourself than you used to be. Riker says, maybe that's the problem. I'm too comfortable here. Troy says, I'm not sure I know what you mean. You are happy here, happier than I've ever known you to be. So it comes down to the simple question, what do you want, Will Riker? We got extras in engineering. Boy, does she look young? She looks like a teenager. She's probably in her 20s, but dang, she's probably sitting there going, I'm on the Enterprise, I'm on the Enterprise. Sorry, I had to throw that in. So they're down in engineering, and Shelby, a manipulation effect in the Borg ship's subspace field. A definite pattern at 4.8-minute intervals during their first confrontation with them. Geordi says it might indicate high output auxiliary generators kicking in. Shelby says one theory is that their systems are decentralized with redundant power sources located throughout the ship. Data says that is a reasonable conclusion. Borg technology has given each member of this society the ability to interface and function collectively. It is likely they have constructed their ship with the same philosophy. Wesley says you knock out one generator and another one takes over without interruption. Riker says, what kind of damage would we have to do to shut them down? Shelby says projections suggest that a Borg ship like this one could continue to function effectively even if 78% of it was inoperable. Wesley says, and our best shot barely scratched the surface. Geordi says, well, from what I've seen, I can't believe that any of these new weapon systems can be ready in less than 18 months, Commander. Shelby says, we are projecting 24 months. Riker says, is there anything we can do to adapt our current defense systems? Geordi says, we will have to go through the specs again, but I don't know. My mind has turned to clay. Wesley says, mine too. Shelby says, I think we should look at modifying the plasma phaser design. Riker says, Commander, I think we should call it a night. That's an order. We'll reconvene at 0500. Shelby asks Riker if she may be allowed to continue with Mr. Data, who does not require rest. Riker says, you need rest, Commander. Shelby says, if we have a confrontation with the Borg without improving our defense systems. Riker says, if we have a confrontation, I don't want a crew fighting the Borg at the same time they are fighting their own fatigue. Dismissed! Oh, the tension between those two. Could you see, what was Dan and Shelley Long on Cheers? How they used to go at it, and then they'd get all physical. There was another character that used to do that too. They would argue, and then they would get all heated. I forget which. Sorry, I got distracted. Hi. Then we're in our meeting room here. Riker, Crusher, Geordi, Shelby, Captain Picard, Data, and Worf are getting briefed by Hansen. Hansen is talking. At 1900 hours yesterday, the USS Lalo departed Zeta Alpha 2 on a freight run to Sentinel Minor 4. At 2200 hours 12 minutes, a distress signal was received at Starbase 157. The Lalo reported contact with an alien vessel described as a cube-shaped. The distress signal ended abruptly, and she has not been heard from since. Picard says, Mr. Data, how long would it take to get there at warp 9? Data says 1 hour, 17 minutes. Picard says, make it so. Hansen says, we are coming with every available starship to assist, Captain, but the closest ship is 6 days away. At warp 9? You need to move faster than that. Picard says, we will try and keep them occupied until you arrive. Hansen says, I know you will. Riker says, all hands to battle station. Picard says, Commander Shelby, what is the status of your defense preparations? Shelby says, Mr. LaForge has a plan to modulate shield mutation. Hopefully that will hold them off for a while. Yeah, 10 seconds. Geordi says, at the same time, we will be returning phasers to higher EM base emitting frequencies to try to disrupt their subspace field. Picard says, what is your assessment of our potential effectiveness? Geordi says, it's a shot in the dark, Captain, but for now it's the best we can do. I'm telling you, I want to see you out there. If 7 of 9 and Janeway were in this meeting, how would it go differently? I'm saying. I've been too spoiled by the Voyager stuff. Oh, I've got lots of Voyager comments this time around. Lots of Voyager comments. In the next scene, the captain is pacing the bridge. Worf says, reading unidentified vessel just entering sensor range, bearing 210 mark 151. Picard tells him to hail them. Worf says no response. Picard says move to intercept. Worf says the vessel has already changed course to intercept with us. Approaching at warp 9, entering visual range. Picard says on screen, magnify, it's the Borg cube. Picard tells Worf to dispatch a message to Admiral Hansen, we have engaged the Borg. Worf says, Captain, you are being hailed. Picard says, I'm being hailed? Worf says, yeah, by name. Riker says, Data is the same ship we faced at J-25. Data says, uncertain, Commander, but the dimensions are precisely the same. Well, that's because all the Borg ships are precisely the same. Wait till we get to Voyager and we get that big Hy-Vee thing and we see all these cubes flying all over the place. Picard says on screen, he introduces himself. the Jean-Luc Picard, captain of the starship Enterprise, blah, 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 blah. Excuse me, why did we just park here? Why the hell are we parked next to the Borg? I'm just saying. Okay. This is not Janeway's Borg. That is so not. It looks like a bunch of scaffolding. Tell me that does not look like a bunch of scaffolding. These are not the same cubes we get in Voyagers. The cubes from Voyager times are more sophisticated. I think this looks like a bunch of scaffold. The Borg say his name and the ship name and then says you will lower your shields and prepare to transport yourself aboard our vessel. If you do not cooperate, we will destroy your ship. Picard says you have committed acts of aggression against the United Federation of Planets. If you do not withdraw immediately. Borg's like, muff you. Borg says you will surrender yourself or we will destroy your ship. Your defensive capabilities are unable to withstand. Picard cuts them off. Riker says, what the hell do they want with you? Shelby says, I thought they weren't interested in human life forms, only our technology. What happened to the assimilation speech? Oh, wait, that's on Voyager. Picard says the priorities seem to have changed. Picard talks to the Borg. We have developed new defense capabilities since our last meeting, and we are prepared to use them. If you do not withdraw from Federation space. I feel like I'm spoiled by Voyager for these inferior Borg. I'm sorry, but these are just not my Voyager Borg. Geordi tells the captain the shields are being probed. I am modulating mutation. The Borg put a tractor beam. Worf says the Borg are attempting to lock onto us with their tractor beam. Picard says low torpedo bays, arm phasers lock coordinates on the source of the tractor beam. I feel like torpedoes went out with the Dark Ages or whatever. And shouldn't they already be loaded? I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I thought, weren't torpedoes with submarines? I forget. I'm just shipper-tapping. Picard, Riker asks for shield status. Data says holding. Shelby says the mutation modulation has them confused. Riker says they have the ability to analyze and adapt, Commander. The look Shelby gives him when he says they have the ability to adapt, Commander, she just looks at him. I'm just saying, she just gives him a look. Geordi says shield modulation has failed. They have locked on. Worf says shields are being drained. He does a countdown. Geordi says trying to recalibrate mutation. Worf said shields have failed. Picard says fire all weapons. Geordi says their subspace field is intact. New phaser frequencies have no impact. Riker says reverse engines. Geordi says full reverse, says we are not moving. Picard says fire at will. Worf launches torpedoes, phaser spread continuing. Data says no damage to the Borg vessel. The Borg are cutting into the hull, into the engineering section. Riker tells Geordi to evacuate engineering. Geordi tells the computer to evacuation sequence. Shelby says data fluctuate phaser resonance frequencies. Random settings, keep them changing. Don't give them time to adapt. Worf says the tractor beam is released. Picard says warp 9, course 151, Mark 330. She is so pleased with herself. Massively pleased that she got Data to do that. Massively pleased. My poor baby, he's got sinus issues. He's also got diabetes, and his vet is not a nice person. She needs to give me an antibiotic. She hasn't given me an antibiotic. She charged me $600 for the visit, though. But I did get 1 month of insulin. Anybody have any insulin? Sorry. I know. You sound so congested. You wheezy. I bought some homeopathic stuff. It helps a little, a very little. We shall see. But I just can't get over the smug look on her face that this was her idea and she's going to get credit for it. This is going to help her move up in the ranks. You want to get down. Come on, get down. He's almost 18 years old. Geordi comes to the bridge. Worf says they are in pursuit, Captain. Picard says maintain course. Riker says asks Geordi for damage report. Geordi says hull rupture in main engineering. The damage is pretty heavy. We lost a lot of good people down there. Data says 11 dead and 8 more unaccounted for, Captain. Riker says repair teams to engineering. Seal hull breach. Geordi says they did not get to the core. I can control the functions from here. Wesley says now approaching Pulsar Nebula, sir. How did Wesley know that that's where Picard wanted to go? Picard says drop to impulse. Picard says take us in. Wesley says defense field is dense. Picard asks Data about it, and Data gives a whole bunch of details and says should provide an effective screen against their sensors. Picard says Mr. LaForge, prepare to reverse engines, full stop. Worf says the Borg ship is continuing scans, attempting to locate their position. Hey, move out of the way! You're in my spot! You like this? She's like all up and she's all important. She's all up here. And Picard's like, excuse me, this is my spot. This is where the captain stands. And then they go into the purple stuff. So, why isn't the captain getting the technical briefing? So, they're in the ready room, and Shelby says time index 5.14. Data says started to fluctuate phasor resonance frequencies. The Borg beam breaks contact. Slow playback, take a closer look. Geordi says there's a 2% drop in power for an instant. Why is it a system-wide? Their phasor frequency spread was in a high, narrow band. Data says conceivably the ship's power distribution nodes are vulnerable to those frequencies. Geordi says if we can generate a concentrated burst of power at the same frequency distribution, I mean a lot more than anything our phasers or photon torpedoes could ever provide. Riker says, how would we do that? Wesley says the deflector dish. Geordi says the only component of the Enterprise designed to channel that much power at controlled frequencies. Shelby says end program. Unfortunately, there is one slight detail in the process. The blast completely destroys the Enterprise as well. Riker says if we could get further away, increase the deflector range. Shelby said it could work. In the meantime, we could return all phasers, including the hand units, to the same frequency. Riker says proceed. I will inform the captain. Shelby says there is one other consideration I would like to make, Commander. Separate the saucer section. Assign a skeleton crew to create a diversion. Riker says we may need the power from the saucer's impulse engines. Shelby says, but it would give them more than one target to worry about. Riker says it's too great a risk. Shelby says, I like the captain to make that decision, sir. Riker says, Commander, I bring all alternatives to the captain. I always tell him everything. Yeah, well, Miss Goody Two Shoes. So she leaves. Geordi says, Riker, I'm going to install higher capacity power transfers to the deflector shift. Riker says, how long? Geordi says, better part of a day. Riker says, she's got a full head of steam, doesn't she? Geordi agrees. She's a formidable presence, to say the least. But I am convinced she can help us, Commander. Riker says, I am too. Don't worry about it. I can handle Shelby. So while Geordi and Riker are having their few little tete-a-tete, Shelby is running full speed. Judy Capitan. Up, channeling some Q there. Capitan. Riker comes in and finds Shelby already there. Picard says, Commander Shelby was just telling me of your concerns about her plan. Riker says, I'm sorry if she troubled you, sir. I've already informed her. Picard says, yes. I entirely agree with you, number one. It's not the time, but the time may come when we will be prepared to take greater risks. I want you to consider her plan as a fallback position. Make the necessary arrangements. So Riker and Shelby go into the turbo lift. Riker tells Commander Shelby that you and I need to have a conversation. Shelby says, you never told me not to tell the captain. Riker says, you disagree with me, fine. You need to take it to the captain, fine. But you do it through me. You do not do an end run around me. Again, I will snap you back so hard you would think you are a first-year cadet again. Shelby says, may I speak frankly, sir? Riker says, go ahead. She says, you are in my way. Riker says, really, how terrible for you. Shelby says, all you know how to do is play it safe. I suppose that's why someone like you sits in the shadow of a great man for as long as you have, passing one command after another. And then she says, proceed to decade. She doesn't say computer. Proceed to decade. She just says, so how does the computer know? How does the computer know that she wants to go to decade? She did not say computer or turbo lift or whatever you called. Resume and go to turbo decade. She just said proceed. All right, it was a little. All right, I'm being a little, but I know I'm being this. It was a pet peeve. Riker says, when it comes to this ship and this crew, you are damned right I play it safe. Shelby says, if you can't make the big decisions, Commander, I suggest you make room for someone who can. The next scene, we have a voiceover. The Enterprise remains concealed in the dust cloud, and to my surprise, the Borg have maintained their position, waiting for us to come out of hiding. I have no explanation for their special interest in me or the ship. We continue to prepare our defense for the inevitable confrontation, but I must admit, on this night, I contempt the distinct possibility that no defense may be adequate against this enemy. An extra gets one-on-one with Patrick Stewart, gets to be in the scene. No lines, but who the hell cares about lines? I got to be in Star Trek, and I got to be in a scene with Patrick Stewart. That is bragging rights forever. You may have sat at the helm, or you may have done a walkthrough, but I got to stand next to Patrick Stewart and give him an iPod to look at. I'm serious, bragging rights forever. So he walks into 10 forward and Guinan and talks to Guinan. It's so nice to see Whoopi Goldberg again. She asks him if he's having trouble sleeping. He says it's something of a tradition, Guinan, captain touring the ship before battle. Guinan says, oh, before a hopeless battle, if I remember the tradition correctly. Picard says, not necessarily. Nelson toured the HMS Victory before Trafalgar. Guinan says, but Nelson never returned from Trafalgar, did he? Picard says, no, but the battle was won. Guinan says, do you expect to win the battle? I'm like, 15 years with Catherine Janeway. We'll see, because we got 5 more with this. You got to give it 1 or 2 with the movies. And then we have 7 seasons of Voyager. So my erroneous calculations. But we will win. But it's going to be Captain Janeway that's going to win. And 7 of 9. That's why I'm saying, how much better, how would this have changed the episode? How would their expertise, if they came back in time, how would they change this episode? I'm still challenging the fan fiction writers. And fingers crossed they let me post it on Facebook. But I'm interested in how this would change, how it would change, and if you guys are for it or against it. If you think that Captain Catherine Janeway and 7 of 9 could have made a difference in this episode, I definitely, absolutely, 100% think yes, they could have made a difference. Picard says, we may prevail yet. There's a conceit, but it's a healthy one. I wonder if Emperor Heronius, watching the Visigoths coming over the Seventh Hill, truly realized that the Roman Empire was about to fall. Well, it's just another page in history, isn't it? Will this be the end of our civilization? Turn the page. She's talking about a book. I know. Don't ask me which one. But one of my cozy authors, I swear, has a bookshop called Turn the Page in their novels. I forget which one. One of you peeps might know. But there's definitely a book where the name of the shop is called Turn the Page. It's so familiar to me. Guinan says this isn't the end. Picard says, you say that with remarkable assuredness. Guinan says, with experience. When the Borg destroyed my world, my people were scattered throughout the universe. We survived as humanity survived. As long as there is a handful of you to keep the spirit alive, you will prevail, even if it takes a millennium. The captain is called to the bridge. The next scene, Riker says there are some sort of magnetomic guide charges. Picard says status of shields. Worf says 48%. Mr. LaForge says, I may have to take us out of here. Picard says, Mr. LaForge, I may have to take us out of here. I want all the power you can give me. Geordi says, engines are ready, Captain. And again, I know I mentioned this earlier, but this was where I put it in my notes, that if the camera is not showing a person and there's a group of people in the room having a conversation, they really should say, Riker said, or Captain said, or Geordi said, so that the deaf people know who was saying what. Because sometimes there's a group of people, and if the camera's not on them, you don't know who's speaking. I'm just saying. Geordi says, recommended you adjust shield harmonics to favor the upper EM band when you proceed. Picard says, acknowledge. Worf says, direct hit, deck 9. Riker asks for damage report. Worf says, structural latching system integrity breach. Picard says, prepare to take it out of here, number 1. Riker says, fire up the engines, half impulse until we clear the nebula, and punch it to warp 9. Picard says, ready phasers, load torpedo bays, engage. Now, I know you're all going to climb on top of me for this, but my question is, they flew out right past the Borg. Was that not a back door? Couldn't they have gone out the other way? There had to be another side to this nebula, right? This nebula had to be ginormous. They couldn't have gone out another door. They couldn't have gone out the back way. I'm just saying. They had to fly right past them. Go, hey, I'm leaving. Here I am. You can see me now. That was my pet peeve for that scene, is that they flew right by them. They couldn't have just gone out the back door or gone the other side or gone up this way or down that way. No, they flew right by them. Yeah, huh? Picard says fire will continue rotating shield frequency. Worf says shield's failing. Worf says tractor beam has locked onto us again. So the Borg beam in, and they all just stand there. Seriously, they all just stand there. I'll get to it in a second. But I had an idea. You remember on the so you remember in Stargate, not Stargate. Yeah, Stargate Atlantis. In one of the later seasons with the oh god, the Asgard, with the Asgard, and they asked uh O'Neill and Carter and Daniel to come save them because they were less technically advanced. And you know what they did the replicators with? They shot them with real bullets. You know what it worked on the Borg? Shot them with real bullets. If you had brought antique old guns, regular machine guns, Tommy guns, I bet if you bought one of those things Anita Blake uses, those surface to air missile type situations. But I'm serious, just a gun. But of course, this is sci-fi. We don't do that in sci-fi. We use phasers. It was just a thought, and I wanted to say, of all the Borg to appear, there's three of them that appear on the ship. She's the smallest, and it looks like a girl, and she's the smallest. The other two were big, huge guys, and they revert to hand-to-hand combat. And I'm like, we need the Asgard. We need O'Neill. He just would have shot him. That's all O'Neill would have done. But I'm still saying, I still think Janeway would have been good in this episode. I think her and Seven would have been great. Just saying. So they capture Picard. So they take Picard. The captain disappears. The Borg vessel deactivates the tractor beam and heads away at warp 9. The Enterprise follows. Then Riker contacts O'Brien and asks if he can get a transporter fix on the captain, and O'Brien says no, there's some kind of interference. I can't lock in on his signal. Now again, I think I've mentioned this twice already, and I'm just going to go there. When they speak over speaker to somebody, and the somebody's not in the room, how does a deaf person know who's talking back? I'm just saying. It's just a pet peeve. Riker says senior officers report to the bridge. Worf said the coordinates they set are on direct course for Earth. Just a second here. So then we're on the Borg cube. It's so light. There's so many lights. The metal is all shiny. This is not our 7 of 9 dark, haunting Borg cube. They've got lots of light. They've got shiny new metal. It's not my 7, it's not my Voyager Borg cube. It's just not. It's too clean. It's way too clean. The next scene we're on the Borg cube, and this is starting to look a little like Voyager. Otherwise, it's just too clean. The Borg talk to him. Captain Picard, you lead the strongest ship of the Federation fleet. You speak for your people. Picard says, I have nothing to say to you, and I will resist you with my ounce of strength. Borg says, strength is irrelevant. Resistance is futile. I believe this is the first time we have heard the phrase. Someone please let me know. We wish to improve ourselves. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is not what we usually hear. It's don't we usually hear we will add your uniqueness to our collective or something like that? Isn't that what they normally say? This is not what we say. We will add your biological and technical distinctions to our own. Your culture will adapt to service ours. That is not a Borg. That is not a Borg thing from the future. That is not a Borg thing. That is so not a Borg thing. Picard says, impossible. My culture is based on freedom and self-determination. Borg says, freedom is irrelevant. Self-determination is irrelevant. You must comply. Picard says, we would rather die. Borg says, death is irrelevant. Your archaic cultures are authority-driven. To facilitate our introduction into your societies, it has been decided that a human voice will speak for us in all communications. You have been chosen to be that voice. Where's the queen? Where's our Borg queen? I mean, look how big that is. Look at it, looks like scaffolding. You cannot tell me it looks like scaffolding, and very clean scaffolding. That is not the Borg cubes from the future. That is so not the Borg cubes from the future with all the tubes and the wires hanging all over the place and the moving stuff. That is so not your Borg cube from the future. It is just not. Next scene, we're back on the Enterprise. Worf says they are leading us into the heart of our own defenses. Geordi says, yeah, well, so far they haven't had much of a reason to worry about our defenses. Wesley says, if the Borg stay at warp 9.6, we will be forced to discontinue pursuit and power down in less than 3 hours. And Data has to chime in, 2 hours, 40 minutes, and 3 seconds. Riker asks Geordi how long before the deflector's ready. Geordi says, we are close, a few hours maybe. I know, I'll get it done in 2. But Commander, I'm going to need some serious power from the warp engines to make this work. So far, we are using everything we've got to keep up with them. Shelby says, sir, we've got to get that ship down to impulse. Riker says, I'm heading an away team over there to get the captain back. We'll find a way to get them out of warp. Ensign Crusher, you will continue to assist Mr. LaForge. All right, now wait a second here. Now, I would go back and replay it, but it's a little much. But when we first come back, before he talks to the guys, it scans the thing. There's nobody there. There's nobody there. After we do the little clutch talk, all of a sudden Crusher's there and Troy. It's like all of a sudden they disappeared. Shelby says, we've got to take the ship down to impulse. Riker says, I'm leading an away team over there to get the captain back. We will find a way to get them out of warp. Ensign Crusher, you will continue to work with Mr. LaForge. Commander Shelby, you take the bridge and coordinate with Starfleet. Data, Worf, Doctor, you with me. Shelby says, with my knowledge of the Borg, Riker says, those are my orders, Commander. Then Troy steps up and goes, Until the return of the Captain Picard, you are in command of the Enterprise. We are in a state of war, and your place is on the bridge. Riker concedes and tells Commander Shelby she will lead the away team. Riker does a voiceover. Our pursuit of the Borg continues on a course that will take us to the very core of the Federation. The devastation they could bring to us is beyond imagination. So we are in the transporter room. Worf says the phasers have been retuned. Each has a different frequency spanning the upper EM band. Shelby says, all right, a reminder, we only get to use each of these once, maybe twice before the Borg adapt. And again, you know what it worked? Guns. I don't believe in guns. I'm not a gun person. My purse is a gun purse. But you know what's in the gun pocket? Tissues! I could put an entire box of tissues in there. It's called allergies. We'll have to do a podcast on that one. The difference between... There's so many purses that have the pockets on either end that I used to... Because I didn't want to have to go into the purse to get tissues to open my purse in public, to have potential people stealing, reaching in. You always see these old videos from the 70s. Person's going out, down an elevator, escalator, and someone's going up, and he reaches and grabs your wallet and goes. So I didn't ever want to have to open my purse for any reason. So I used to put the tissues in the end pockets, but it would show. So when I went to business meetings and stuff like that, it would show. So this purse gives me an extra pocket. It's completely outside, and I can put a gazillion tissues in there, and it's great, and no one sees it, and it's neater. I'm just saying. I got to get me a new one too. It's awful heavy. If I could get one that wasn't made to carry a gun, but was made exactly the same way, that I could still put a box of tissues in that extra pocket, it would work. So where was I? Oh, Shelby says, don't fire until you have to. Dr. Crusher says, what kind of resistance should we expect? Data says, at our first encounter, the Borg virtually ignored us when we beamed aboard the vessel, clearly that they did not consider our being there a threat. Again, I'm sorry. I know I'm a broken record, but you know how much Janeway and Seven could have been expertise in this? Shelby says that may change, however, if we start interfering with their plans. And as another one of my things, I thought you couldn't beam from ship to ship going at warp 9. I thought this was a technicality that you actually had to drop out of warp or slow at least to impulse before you could do the beaming thing, but they do the beaming thing. Shelby tells the bridge they are ready. Riker says we have 58 minutes before we have to power down and disengage. Shelby says understood. Riker says proceed, Commander. No unnecessary risk. Clear. Shelby says clear. O'Brien says we have match warp velocity for transport. So they beam aboard the Borg ship and then they all just stand there. And again, would you look at this ship? It's clean, it's spotless, it's shiny, it's well lit. That is not our Borg ship with the tubes hanging and the tubes and the stuff. That is not our Borg ship. Look how spotless that stupid thing is. I'm serious. And they all just stand there. Worf says tricorder functions are minimal. Shelby says, is there any signs of life? Worf says inconclusive. Walk around the ship, and I'm sorry, I'm broken Recordville, but look how clean this ship is. I'm serious. So they examine the ship. Dr. Crusher says, look at this extraordinary. Data says it appears to be some kind of power waveguide, conduits which allow them to work collectively. These are not Janeway's Borg. These are so not Janeway's Borg. As they perform ship functions, Shelby says there's no way to take out enough of these to disable them. Dr. Crusher says, what if we look at this from the point of view of a mosquito? Data says, an interesting metaphor, Doctor. What's your idea? Dr. Crusher says, if we sting them in a tender spot, they might stop for a minute to scratch. All right. I know I'm a broken record, but I gotta say it again. You see how clean that is? Do you see how massively clean that is? How shiny that is? It's all nice and lit. It's all aluminum. It's not the dark and eerie looking Borg cube from Voyager. It's shiny. There's lots of room. There's air conditioned ducts. I'm serious. That's what it looks like. I'm serious. So Worf says the commander's communicator is still active. Dr. Crusher tries to page Picard. Are you kidding me? Are you gonna tell them you're there? Hey, we're here. Then Riker is in the captain's room. He's saying he strongly recommends redeploying all available defenses to protect Sector 1. Hansen says we are moving to intercept at Wolf 359. We will make our stand there. How much longer can you maintain pursuit? Riker says 22 minutes if they stay at their current speed. If we can't bring them out of warp, we will do as much damage as we can before we have to disengage. Hansen asks about Picard. Riker says nothing yet, sir. Okay. You see how clean that is? And shiny? And new? You remember the operating rooms and the Borg stuff that went on Voyager? where there was blood everywhere and their body pieces everywhere as they reattached the mechanical stuff. It's just, I have this thing where I don't know what to say and I want you to fill in the blank. So I'll go, it's just. And that's what this is. It's too clean, it's too sterile, it's too shiny. This is not our Borg. I'm sorry. And he puts them in a nice big drawer. Uh-huh. This is not Voyager's Borg. This is so not Voyager's Borg. So they locate the captain's bin with the uniform and stuff. And like I said, it was just too clean. So then Shelby contacts Riker and says that they found the captain's uniform and his communicator and they are resuming their search. Wesley and Geordi enter the bridge. Wesley says we are in business. Geordi says it will burn out the main deflector, but it will be one hell of a bang. Riker says about radiation danger. Wesley says we will have to evacuate the entire forward half of the secondary hull on the lower 3 decks of the saucer. Troy says she will see to that and she leaves. Riker says, Shelby, you only have 17 minutes of warp power left. Do whatever you can to get them out of warp. Shelby acknowledges. She says, let's take out some of these distribution nodes and see what happens. Wesley and Geordi enter the bridge. Wesley says we're in business. Geordi says it will burn out the main deflector, but it will be one hell of a bang. Riker asks about radiation danger. Wesley says we'll have to evacuate the entire forward half of the secondary hull on the lower 3 decks of the saucer. Troy says she will see to that. Riker tells Shelby she only has 17 minutes of warp power left. Do what you can to get them out of warp. Shelby acknowledges. Again, they're on the Borg ship, so they fire on the distribution nodes. Wesley. I'm sorry, I've lost my place twice here. This is embarrassing. Riker tells Shelby they only have 17 minutes of warp power left. Do whatever you can to get them out of warp. Shelby acknowledges. Shelby says, let's take out some of the distribution nodes and see what happens. They fire on the nodes. Wesley says they've done it. The Borg ship is dropping out of warp. Riker says go to impulse power. Geordi says diverting warp power to main deflector. Riker says to move us within 40,000 kilometers of match velocity. Commence arming sequence. Increase deflector modulation to the upper band. Then we are back on the Borg ship. Shelby contacts the Enterprise for beam out. They fire on some more Borg and Borg adapt to the frequencies. Then they find Jean-Luc. He's been converted to the Borg, and they leave the Borg cube. So they're back on the Enterprise. Riker asks about the captain. Data says we were unable to retrieve him. The captain has been altered by the Borg. Riker says, altered? Worf says he is Borg. Shelby says we will go back. I need more people. We need to return the phasers. We will get him out of there. Geordi says, Commander, reading subspace fluctuations from within the Borg ship. It looks like they are regenerating, restoring power. They could be capable of warp any minute. Riker says if the deflector is ready, Geordi says it's ready. Dr. Crusher says, Will, he's alive. If we could get him back to the ship, I might be able to restore him. Riker says this is our only chance to destroy them. If they get back into warp, our weapon is useless. Shelby says we'll sabotage them again if we have to. Riker says we can't maintain power. We don't have the time. Prepare to fire. Riker says we can't maintain power. We don't have the time. Prepare to fire. Shelby says at least consult with Starfleet Command. Get Admiral Hansen on subspace. Riker says belay that order. There is no time. Worf says we are being hailed by the Borg. Picard comes on screen. I am the cutest of Borg. Resistance is futile. Your life as it been is over from this time forward. You will serve us. Riker tells Worf to fire. To be continued. This is a really interesting end screen. It's different from the others. Proceed instead of engage is our new term. Communicate chapters return. This is new. This is not what the other one says. So I hope you've enjoyed our recap. It was a little extra long. This is a really intense episode. It took me almost, I'd say, 25 hours to do this whole thing. I'm talking it. I watched this episode for 20 plus hours, seriously. And this video goes a little over an hour, and it actually took me 4.5 hours to make. So I could really appreciate those like and subscribes and thumbs up for all my effort here. I just read books and talk books, unwatch Star Trek, and do a recap. I'm a series person. I like series. I like binge reading series and binge watching series. Come here. Come here. Come here, Sammy. Come here, Sammy. Come here, Sammy. Come on. Come on. I've caught a catfish. Hi. I'm the baby of the family. You never see me. So please hit the like and subscribe, and we will be hitting season 4. Best of Both Worlds Part 2. See what happens to Picard and Locutus and Shelby and Riker and Data and Wesley. Goodbye. So see you next Friday for Best of Both Worlds Part 2. And if anybody can answer my question, if they think it would be a better thing with Janeway and Seven, how could they change this episode? What would they bring to it? It would be awesome to have some communication from y'all. But please hit the like and subscribe, and tune in next Friday for Best of Both Worlds Part 2. And don't forget my daily book reviews and my Flashback Mondays. I'd really appreciate the thumbs up, like, and subscribe to D. Louise Book Series channel. Thank you. Have a good one.